Imagine doing everything right and still losing $150 billion in value almost overnight. Most companies would have collapsed. Most CEOs would have resigned. But Forrest Li didn't. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how a single video game, Free Fire, was used as a high-speed ATM to fund one of the most aggressive, expensive, and successful e-commerce takeovers in history. By the end of this story, you'll understand the infinite money glitch that allowed Shopee to crush its rivals, the Trojan Horse strategy that fooled Alibaba, and most importantly, the one leadership trait that saved them when the money finally ran out. The year is 2009. If you walked into any humid, neon-lit internet cafe in Southeast Asia, from Jakarta to Manila, you'd see a sea of teenagers hunched over monitors. They were playing League of Legends or Dota, but they weren't playing on a platform owned by a Silicon Valley giant. They were using Garena. At the center of this was Forrest Li. He was a Stanford MBA grad who famously sat in the audience when Steve Jobs gave his "Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish" speech. But Li realized something most tech founders miss. The digital world is divided into cash cows and cash burns. To build an empire, you need the cow to feed the fire. Garena was the ultimate cash cow. In the beginning, they were just distributors. They took games made by Western companies and localized them for the fractured, difficult markets of Southeast Asia. It was a good business, but it wasn't an empire. Then came Free Fire. The strategy behind Free Fire was a masterclass in psychological and technical accessibility. While competitors like PUBG or Fortnite required expensive, high-end smartphones and massive data plans, Garena designed Free Fire to run on potatoes, the cheap, low-end smartphones used by the masses in emerging markets. It was small, it was fast, and it was addictive. This created what I call the infinite money glitch. In gaming, once the code is written and the server is live, the marginal cost of one more user is practically zero. But the marginal revenue from that user buying a $2 skin for their digital gun is pure profit. By 2017, Garena wasn't just a gaming company, it was a printing press for cash. But here is the part that will change how you think about business. Forrest Li didn't want to be the next Nintendo. He was just using gaming to build a war chest for a much more dangerous, much dirtier game. By 2015, Garena was swimming in billions. But Forrest Li knew that gaming has a ceiling. Trends change, and kids eventually find new hobbies. He wanted to own the daily life of every consumer. That meant e-commerce. Enter Shopee. At the time, the Southeast Asian e-commerce market was already won. It was dominated by Lazada, a company backed by the infinite pockets of Alibaba. Everyone told Li he was too late. On paper, Shopee should have died in 6 months. But Shopee had a secret weapon, Garena's bank account. This is where we see the power of cross-subsidization. If you understand this, you'll see why Shopee was able to do things that seemed financially suicidal. Shopee entered the market with a burn-the-boats mentality. They offered free shipping with no minimum spend. They gave away massive discounts. They launched marketing campaigns that made no sense, like hiring Cristiano Ronaldo to do a cringy dance or Jackie Chan to fight for 9.9 sale days. They were burning hundreds of millions of dollars every single month. To an outsider, it looked like a disaster. To the investors at Alibaba-backed Lazada, it looked like a desperate startup trying to buy friends. But Shopee was the dumbest player in the market by design. They could afford to be stupid because they were the only ones who didn't need their e-commerce business to make money. Every time a kid in Brazil, India, or Indonesia bought a digital hat in Free Fire, that money was being funneled directly into a shipping voucher for a housewife in Thailand buying detergent on Shopee. While Lazada was trying to be corporate and efficient, Shopee was being scrappy and subsidized. They went mobile first when everyone else was still focused on desktops. They built different apps for every country, recognizing that a shopper in Vietnam wants a different experience than a shopper in Malaysia. This hyper-localization, funded by gaming gold, allowed Shopee to flip the script. By 2020, the underdog had become the leader. But there is a dark side to the infinite money glitch. What happens when the glitch is patched? In 2021, the world changed. The post-pandemic tech bubble burst. Investors who once cheered for growth at all costs suddenly demanded profit at all costs. And then, the unthinkable happened. In early 2022, the Indian government, Shopee's biggest potential growth market, suddenly banned Free Fire due to security concerns. Almost overnight, the ATM was jammed. The money stopped flowing. The parent company, now called Sea Limited, saw its market value crash. It plummeted from a peak of over $200 billion to just $30 billion. They lost $150 billion in value, more than the entire market cap of most legacy companies. The cash-burning monster of Shopee was still hungry, but the gaming brother who paid the bills was now in the hospital. This is the moment where 99% of startups fail. This is the moment where the moral of the story begins. Forrest didn't hide. He didn't blame the market. Instead, he forced his entire organization to embrace what he calls the capacity to suffer. This is a term you need to remember. It's the ability of a company to endure extreme pain today for the sake of survival tomorrow. Lee sent a 900-word memo to his thousands of employees. It wasn't a "we're doing great" corporate fluff piece. It was a wartime manifesto. He announced that he and the entire leadership team would stop taking a salary until the company was self-sufficient. He banned business-class travel for everyone. He cut the free lunch programs at the offices. He limited meal expenses to $30 a day. He shut down Shopee's operations in Europe and several Latin American countries overnight. He was essentially performing surgery on his own body without anesthesia. He had to prove that Shopee could survive without Garena's money. The transition was brutal. Thousands of people were laid off. The massive subsidies that customers loved, the free shipping and 50% off vouchers, started to disappear. The critics were certain that the moment the free money stopped, the customers would leave. They assumed Shopee was a house of cards built on a foundation of gaming revenue. But they were wrong. During the years of Garena-funded growth, Shopee hadn't just bought customers, they had built infrastructure. They had built their own logistics network called Shopee Express. They had become a daily habit. Because they had overinvested when they had the money, they had a moat that was too deep for competitors to cross, even when Shopee stopped spending. By late 2023, the impossible happened. Sea Limited reported its first ever annual profit. Shopee, the business that everyone said was a bottomless pit for cash, was finally standing on its own 2 feet. It had survived the transition from a subsidized startup to a profitable giant. But the story doesn't end there. If you think Forrest is satisfied with just gaming and shopping, you're missing the third pillar of the empire, money, formerly Sea Money. Today, Sea Group is moving into its most ambitious phase yet. They are becoming the digital bank of Southeast Asia. They aren't just taking your money for a digital skin or a new pair of shoes. They want to hold your savings, provide your credit, and process your insurance. By using the data from what you play, Garena, and what you buy, Shopee, they know your creditworthiness better than any traditional bank ever could. In 2025, Forrest told his team that AI is the personal computer moment of our generation. He is now betting the entire future of the company on AI-driven finance. He believes that by automating the banking experience for the unbanked millions in Southeast Asia, Sea Group can reach a $1 trillion valuation. It sounds like a stay foolish dream, doesn't it? But remember, they've done this before. So, what is the moral of the story for you? First, the capacity to suffer is your ultimate edge. In a world of easy money, everyone looks like a genius. But when the tide goes out, the winner is the one who can cut deep, move fast, and endure the pain of restructuring. C Group survived because they didn't wait for the market to save them. They saved themselves. Second, cross-subsidization is a strategic superpower. You don't need to be the best at everything. You just need one cash cow that gives you the license to be the dumbest player in a second, larger market. By the time your competitors realize you're not just being stupid, you've already captured the market. Third, hyper-localization beats global scale. Alibaba is a giant, but Shopee won because they realized that Southeast Asia is not one market, it's 10. They built for the local user, funded by local gaming habits, and out-executed the global giants by being closer to the ground. Now, when you see that orange Shopee icon or see a kid playing Free Fire on a bus, you'll see more than just an app. You'll see the remnants of a $150 billion war. You'll see the result of a gaming ATM that funded a retail empire. Forrest stayed hungry, and he definitely stayed foolish. But he also stayed alive when everyone else was ready to bury him. The question is, if your infinite money glitch broke tomorrow, would you have the capacity to suffer long enough to win? Now that you know the secret behind the e-commerce takeover, you might be wondering how their rivals are fighting back, or if the new money bank is actually safe. But that's a story for the next video. For now, remember, the best way to fund a dream is to find a cash cow that never sleeps.